It's the Justin Palmer Show. Here we go. Woo! Woo!
Here we are. Tod, what's up, man?
What's good, buddy? How you doing, Jess?
I'm good. It's good to see you. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, man. It's good. It's good to be seen, and it's good to see you too, my man. You got that Hawaii beard going.
For sure.
You got like powerful aloha vibes going on right now, man. I'm
Definitely.
Good for you. I'm following you on the gram. I see the family looks like they're adjusting really well.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Everybody's having fun. Yeah. It's a different existence than New York City for sure.
Yep.
Definitely missing the vibe. I think I'm missing a part of New York City that I don't know exists right now. I don't know. Yeah. It's kind of it's a weird thing how quickly we transitioned here.
Yeah, it's you guys look like you're in another planet that looks like paradise. You know, New York City has been through it. You know, it took some lumps, but we're slowly getting better, man. We're getting back up. You know, don't count New York out.
Ever.
You know, don't ever bet against New York, man. That's just not something that's a good idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a tough couple months, but New York is coming back. It's slow. It's not as fast as New Yorkers want it to be, but New York is going to come back. It's going to come back strong.
Yeah. What's it been like? Because you're very close to Times Square, just where you live and work. What has it been like the last few months? I know you've been in and out of the city, but I think what's that been like?
I mean, it's been just, I think, a lot of different emotions, man. I mean, it's been, at first it was like panic and anxiety, you know. Although I keep on reminding my wife that I bought like a 10 pack of N95s in like the first week of February. Okay. And so so by the time mid-March rolled around, when everybody was like, you know, this thing's gonna really cause some problems, and people really started bugging out and like evacuating the city, and you know, offices and businesses started shutting down and schools started shutting down. You know, I was whipping out the N95s like a champ, and but then it was I think it was like March 13, right around there, right? That week at least, where once they closed public schools, the city, and then also the weather was really rainy and overcast the last 2 weeks of March, I feel like. But the city was just, I mean, it was just desolate, man. It was just like, it was something out of like a movie, you know. It was like I Am Legend or something, man. It was like no one at all in the streets, even at night though, like because we live on 10th Ave, like you said, little couple blocks west of Times Square. And so all the apartment buildings, the windows were all dark at night, man. Like everybody was gone, you know, everyone kind of split. And then it was my wife, I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and we would just we're fortunate, you know, we got the cars in the basement. You know? So it was just kind of like hop in the freight elevator, throw on the masks, get in the car, and then, you know, we just drive around the city, and it was just surreal because you're driving around, there's no one on the street, and then all of a sudden it's just like you know, our favorite barbecue place is open. You know what I mean? So and it's got, and I almost like didn't know, like, do I go in here? Do I like you know, it was like tell you the truth, I remember going into like this barbecue place, really well-known place over in the Flatiron, and like there's like just one dude in there, and he's like cutting the brisket, and it's like in the middle of the pandemic, and you know, all kinds of bad stuff happening on the news, and I'm just sitting there in this place talking to this guy, ordering up some brisket and some like mac and cheese. You know, it was like out of a Kubrick movie or something. You know,
that's wild. That's wild. How did you know? Like, did you have a sense that something was coming to get the N95s, or was it something like internally at the Cov that was like they were prompting you guys, or you just knew?
No, like, so it was I was watching the news, just like paying attention to different outlets. I mean, I think just I always always keep my eye on the newspaper. I'm pretty good with that. And so, I saw this. There was this thing happening in Wuhan, China, and there were conflicting reports about how it was being contained. And I think we saw the Chinese government was using drones and like significant lockdowns, and then also just through my network of friends, my brothers were, some guys who were kind of people who were on the tech saying things like, there's a steady flow of folks from China coming into the United States and other countries, and so this might be something, and so I just fired up a couple of taps on the phone, and grabbed some masks, but I didn't think it would be. I didn't think it would be what it's become. It's been sad, man. I mean, it's been a lot of people displaced by this, and a lot of people, unfortunately, who got sick and died. I think that the economic effects are gonna also cause some real problems socially.
For sure.
Country. Yeah.
Yeah. What have you guys? Because you've been going to work for a couple months now. What have you guys experienced at the Covenant House? Has it been? I mean, because you've got the largest homeless youth shelter in the city. Yeah. What has that been like? Because I remember I think we talked in like April or May, somewhere around that time. I don't remember exactly when it was. And I remember you mentioning that you guys had to really mobilize to get prepared and pull in some extra resources to help keep the shelter clean and safe for everybody.
Yeah. On any given night on the west side of Manhattan, we're sheltering upwards of 300 teenagers and young adults and single mothers and infants and toddlers. And when this hit, we realized that we had young people who were sick, young people who had contracted COVID-19. And so what we did was in our building on West 41st Street, our 8th floor, it's an 8-story building, we evacuated the 8th floor, the administrative floor. We converted all those offices to quarantine rooms. So we discarded the chairs and the desks, and it was just our staff are our heroes here, like our maintenance workers, our direct care workers, our youth advisors and social workers. They were the ones to take action, clear out those offices. Our non-essential staff, like our support staff, finance, administration, they stayed home. And then we've always operated the health center at Covenant House, New York. So we had doctors, licensed physicians, and RNs, and social workers, and medical assistants, and physicians assistants who staffed those floors. And so working in conjunction with New York City and other in the state departments, we were able to secure testing. The challenge for us was really PPE. I think understandably, if you remember when the pandemic really started escalating here in New York City, which is really the epicenter of it in the United States, PPE was hard to come by, and because it was being directed at hospitals, understandably so. Like medical professionals needed N95s. They needed face shields and gloves and gowns. And so organizations like ours, shelters, they weren't prioritized as part of that process, but we were able to secure that through supporters, and also like people like yourself who generously give to Covenant House, enabled us to have the resources to purchase PPE, when we got a line on it. And then, but there were a couple of boxes of N95s and gowns and face shields that were on their way to Javits. And let's just say they fell off the truck.
That's amazing.
So we were able to get by. And then I would say, we have an executive director at Covenant House. Her name's Sister Nancy Downing, and she was our general patent. She's at the site, and she's with the direct care staff, and the staff are scared because the staff are older. The staff aren't. This virus affects older populations more adversely than it does younger populations. It affects people of color more so at a disproportional rate than other folks. And so that's our staff. I mean, our staff are 40s, 50s, 60s. And those people, they came to work every day. We stayed open 24/7. And so our young people, we did have young people who were confirmed positive. We did have staff, but I'm happy to report no one needed emergency medical care. No one needed to be hospitalized. We were able to get by, and we got by because of our community, of our supporters, and we got by because of our staff and our leadership. So I'm thankful, man. I'm thankful. Now we're at this place now where we're participating in this recovery, right? Like we a lot of the young people who stay at our shelter, it's an employment focused program. They can't just be a Covenant House and chill. They have to be working their plan. And so those young people lost their jobs. They were working in restaurants. They were dishwashers, busboys. They were working in retail at H&M and Starbucks. And so they lost jobs, and and now we're working on getting those jobs back. But also, of course, we're also in the midst of this civil rights movement, and that's also affected these teenagers. We serve the majority of our young people are young people of color, and so a large percentage of that are Black youth, and so they've been really engulfed in a difficult few months. And so as our staff are a reflection of the young people we serve. So our focus now is on mental health. I think this whole pandemic and then this also civil rights crisis has created an emergency on the mental health front.
Sure.
It's like, I know in my family, that's really been the focus, right? Like making sure that our kids, especially our oldest, that he's okay. And then, you're so caught up in that. And for a second, I realized, my wife's not okay. And then I realized, wait, I'm not okay, and,
right.
And even Teddy, our 2.5-year-old, I think, it even affected him too. So it's like, when you think about it, if you're a teenager or a young adult without anybody, I think that's even more difficult, and that's kind of, for some of us, it's unthinkable, but they don't have that person to lean on, that person, that mentor, that adult that they go to when they're frightened, when they're excited, when they're happy, is that's our staff, right? That's the men and women who work on the floor. That's the folks who are working in the programs, and so that's why it's so important for us to be there. But so there's a large emphasis on mental health right now, making sure everybody's okay to whatever degree. If it means that they need medicine, that they need to be talking to a licensed social worker or a therapist, we make sure that's happening. And then if it's if it's stuff that can be made healthy in a group, we do that too.
Yeah. Can you do me a favor and just stay leaned in a little bit so that it's all good? Yeah. No, I think understanding like the short-term nature of the program and the monumental challenge that you guys have to try to turn these kids' lives around and build some basic momentum, right, for in a positive direction, is already a challenge. And what you're describing, I hadn't even really thought about it, but just that extra layer of what's happening in the world with these young kids, has that been, it sounds like it's been a real challenge.
Yeah, it has. I mean, one of the things that was a real concern for us early on was the flow of information. And it was something that, because they would read something that was unsubstantiated and false online, because young people experiencing homelessness, they have smartphones. They kind of do the pay-as-you-go plan or whatever, but So if one young person like on the floor reads something that's not true, they'll it starts to spread, and so the staff had to kind of really keep people as really tuned in and relaxed as possible, and that was difficult to do. Like rumor and fear, or I should say fear, kind of fueling rumor, was a thing. Yeah, and then the whole distancing thing, like we have 300 kids, we have 150 in Manhattan, another 150 in the Bronx, and so space isn't a luxury in New York City, and so especially in an organization like ours, so you can't really distance, right? You can't.
Yeah,
it's impossible to keep that space, and some young people we have 3 kids in a room sometimes. They're larger rooms, but that's how we have to be structured. So that was tough also.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible that you guys were able to move through the storm of the pandemic without any major health issues. I think it's it sounded like when we spoke a couple months ago, you guys were like really in not reaction mode. You were in like proactive execution mode, which is incredible. And I wanted to ask you, because I actually we haven't really talked about this that much. Just your day to day as a social worker, how did that journey start for you? Right? I mean, I think I can't remember how long you've been at Covenant House, but it's been a long time. 20
years next week.
Wow.
Yeah, 20 years September 1.
Okay.
It's September 1 next week. Well, it's close. Not next week, 2 weeks. I grew up in New York City. I came up here on the east side, and I grew up with my mom and my dad. My parents were from Queens, and it was a middle class upbringing. Both my parents worked for a long time, and so as a young kid, as a teenager, I love New York. I loved everything about it. I love the culture, the museums, the sports venues, the hustle bustle, just the kind of the personality, that like kind of quintessential personality of the New Yorker. I've always felt like New Yorkers have common sense and are good people. We get a bad rap, I think, in a lot of ways. I think there's a lot of movies and stuff like that. TV give us a bad rap. It's not true. Like, I think that's why everyone likes to come to New York, because New Yorkers are really friendly. For sure. Yeah. And so, as a young guy, as a teenager, I made bad decisions. I started going down a wrong path. I struggled with drugs and alcohol. I just got into graffiti and skateboarding, and the expression that you don't want your kid hanging out with the wrong crowd. For sure. I was the wrong crowd. That was me. I was that guy. And that makes two of us. Yeah. And so, and I guess at first, it was, as a kid in New York City, that can happen, right? Like, that's part of it. And, but as it went on and it kind of got into older adolescence and young adulthood, it's not fun anymore. It could get serious, and bad things started happening to like friends and things like that. And just, and also my relationships with family. I've always, my family's always been great to me. So I started to really lose my way. I was lost, man. I was lost. And up until like what age was that coming out? Because I feel like in New York, you do grow up fast, right? Even in, my son was there until this year at 7, and like the stuff that you grow up fast in New York, mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So I guess it was like I found my way to Covenant House when I was about 23, 24, and so. Yeah, through that, like 16, that kind of, I would say 6-7 years there, my early 20s. I just wasn't responding well to life, and there were people that were really concerned about me, and so I had a family friend, actually a friend he's a friend of my he was a friend of my parents, but he also knew my grandparents, my mother's parents, and he another Rockaway, Queens guy, and his name was Dick Schmelk, Matt Schmelk's father.
Oh wow,
Matt's a friend of ours, and so Dick he introduced me to the president and CEO at the time of Covenant House International, a lady by the name of Sister Mary Rose McGady. And so I met Sister Mary Rose, and we had a long talk, and she told me I was going to come work for her. She didn't ask me if I wanted to come work for her. She told me I was going to come work for her, which if you knew her, that's kind of how she rolled. She didn't really, she called the shots.
Yeah, a New York young.
Yes. I think I'm even a New York City icon because of what she meant to Covenant House and to young people who were enduring homelessness. And so I started working for her, like directly for her. And
what were you doing? I'm just curious.
So I was doing whatever she wanted me to do. I was she had me doing some clerical stuff. Looking back on it, I almost feel like her and her chief operating officer, Jim Harnett, who was another great guy. They were almost kind of giving me this kind of to like an overview of the organization, it was a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was, to be able to be there with them. Because the organization had shelters in, I think, 14 states and 14 major cities across the country. Some states had multiple houses, and then they also had we operate programs, residential programs in Mexico City, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Honduras. So at the time, they were really kind of having me do a lot of kind of administrative functions around that, but that was pretty short lived before they she told me that that was my inspiration to go to social work school. I went to Fordham University. I got my degree, and I went to Fordham University for a master's in social work right here in Manhattan in Lincoln Center. And then I started working directly with teenagers and young adults and single moms and their children at Covenant House, New York, and in a clinical role. Mm-hmm. I was working at the program and working alongside staff and making sure that we were, that we were doing the best we could to provide for those young people and making sure that we were empowering them with the best plan possible. So that they could achieve independence and live healthy and stable lives. A lot easier said than done.
For sure. Yeah. It's were you going to college and working at the Cov at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you stayed involved. I mean, that must have been a real incredible experience to be able to study what you're actually doing. You know what I mean? Where like you were seeing it, it wasn't theory for you, which I think is a lot of people go to school and they just go to school, right? They're not working, or if they're working, it's like they're working some part-time job that's like an entry-level job. I feel like it, especially having watched you move through the shelter and having, we've spent a lot of time together, just like talking to kids or doing different events, and you absorb it, like you live it, right? It's who you are right now. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was, looking back, it was, I had these angels who would like look out for me, man, because it was, like you said, so I'm working there, I'm working there as like a youth advisor, and I'm going to school, right? And then I would do part of my clinical internship in like the mental health program, because Covenant House operates multiple programs. They really, it's not just a shelter; it's a lot more than that. And so, but when I look back on it as like a guy who was trying to get a master's degree and get a license and really devote the kind of time and attention to that curriculum, I had a lot of really great people who were really tolerant of me, man, you know, and they were just really supportive and really nice people. You know, I think the same thing kind of goes on today, but it's just it's different. Like it's I just feel I feel blessed that I could come across a lot of people who were really nice to me and they just worked with my schedule. But yeah, I was at school full time, working full time. I was just making it work, man. And then I also had my parents. If it wasn't for my father, I wouldn't have made it through all that. You know, he was like there for me to help me out. Because I was renting a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side, and so it was like it was a lot of rice and beans, man.
Yeah,
it was a lot of rice and beans. But at the same time, I quickly found some purpose, you know, and people told me that I had a good way with some of these kids, and I like to think that had to do with the fact that I also, I grew up in the city. I spent a lot of time in the boroughs as a teenager and things like that, and so I also was aware of the temptations out there, and I'd kind of had my experience with that, and so it was something that I felt like for a long time, for those years where I was really lost, I felt like this was giving me an opportunity to make it right, and to kind of I also felt indebted to Sister Mary Rose. I felt like I owed her for giving me that opportunity, and I felt like I owed Dick Schmelk too. And it wasn't. I think I was like 10 years ago. I was 10 years in when Sister Mary Rose passed away, and so that was tough. I think it was about 8 years ago, she had done so much for so many people. I was just, kind of like a name in the middle of the list, of thousands of individuals. She was a real powerhouse. And then Dick Schmelk, he said to me, I remember him telling me, like I always used to thank him all the time profusely. And then he said to me, Todd, stop thanking me, man. I said, and then he said, we're more than even, I get, you've done well there. And he said, and he also told me, how happy he was that it worked out. And so that felt good. I felt a little lighter on my feet, but I hung around for another 10. And I started to get involved in fundraising and working with, good folks like you and Matt and other people who help us keep our shelter doors open and, keep the lights on and the food hot, so to speak, like people who sit on our board and just some really incredible families that, just really wonderful people who are just super generous and their families, there's stories to their families and you learn about what motivates them to help some of these, help our young people. And it's inspirational, man. It's meant so much to me. It's meant, I've really brought Covenant House into all my relationships. I met my wife there.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I met my wife. She was a case manager. She was a volunteer, and then she just really wanted to get a job. So, as she would tell it, she volunteered at first, and then because she really wanted them to hire her, and then they hired her. And she was a youth advisor, a resident advisor in our transitional living, independent living, rites of passage program, and so I saw her at the elevator one day, and she wouldn't talk to me, and so. I just made it my mission to get her to pay attention to me, and then I fooled her into going out with me, and then I fooled her into marrying me. So
you knew right away when you saw her?
Yeah, I mean, I knew. Oh yeah, I mean, I was. Yeah, I mean, I knew that I definitely needed to get to know this person,
Yeah.
And then once that started, I got hooked pretty quick.
Yeah. You're the second person this week. I just talked to a buddy of mine, Victor Reyes, who said the same thing about his wife. And that's how I met my wife. It's just interesting that keeps coming together.
Yeah. I mean, also, you know, we're going to say that because our wives are probably going to watch this.
I hope mine doesn't. I hope she never listens to any of my podcasts.
Yeah, but the truth is, yeah. I mean, I was, you know, I don't know if you mean like love at first sight. I'm not sure about that, but it was like, was I infatuated? Was I obsessed with her? Yeah, for sure. You know, I kind of really wanted to talk to her and wanted to really know what this person was about. You know, and then when that started, I remember I didn't know. You know, it's like that. You know, she said that she would go out with me, and so it's, you know, we've only talked a handful of times, right? And so I'm thinking, what do I do with this girl? You know, like what should I do? What's fun for a date, right? And I text her, hey, you know, because I'm thinking, you know what? There was a great ping pong place at the time on 23rd and like 5th Avenue. I forgot the name of it.
Oh, was it the place that was like underground?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes.
I can't remember the name either.
It was like this. What was the name of that place, man? I don't even remember, dude. But it was like a trendy ping pong club, right?
Yeah.
Like it was super trendy. And I think it was like Susan Sarandon's boyfriend owned it.
Oh, wow.
You know? Yeah. Random. I don't even know if someone put this in my ear or what, man. But so I text her and I'm like, hey, do you play ping pong? And she writes back right away, only in championships. You know, and it's like, I don't even know, you know, I've been getting to know this girl, and that's her response, like right off the bat. And so once I saw that, I was like, you know, this could be something here. You know, she's got a counterpunch, right? Yeah. And so then I picked her up, and she had on like 4-inch high heels. And we went to play ping pong. She was surprised that I was bringing her to play ping pong. But she was like, oh, we're really going there? And I'm like, yeah. And I think maybe she thought I was joking or something, you know? And then you know what else? I took her to get there. I'm like a big bus guy. I was a big bus guy at the time, a New York City bus guy. Like I love the bus. And so, you know, I took her on the bus, and, you know, we joke about it now because she's like, it was so hard to get on that bus with those high heels, and then and then get off the bus and then go down the steps to the ping pong place and then play ping pong. And I was like, you know, I'm like kind of putting some English on the ball, you know what I mean? And so
you were throwing it didn't last.
Yeah, I was throwing it down a little bit. I was like, you know, the backhand, the forehand, I was putting a little English on it. And we didn't play for too long, you know.
Did you let her win?
I might have, man. I don't even know, dude.
The good thing is you don't remember.
Right. And then it was out of there, and, you know, took a walk or got something to eat or something. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so meeting my wife at Covenant House, it was like, it was what we call cov love. And it worked out. Thank goodness it worked out. Because we have 2 beautiful boys, and we got one on the way, man.
You do? Oh, wow. Dude, congratulations, man. Holy shit, dude. Yeah, you're going to be packed in New York City.
I know, dude.
That's incredible.
I'm following your footsteps, pal.
Joining the Threes Club.
That's right.
It gets crazy. I feel like with one, you're like, okay, this is, we can do one-on-one, you know, like the other person can go to the gym or go whatever, right? Mm-hmm. 2 is like, you're in deep water, right? Like there's no more like man-to-man coverage, or like you know, you can go take a break or whatever you need to do. And then 3, you're just enjoying it. That's been my experience. Like with the baby now, I'm like, man, we're not stressing about the kid's got a rash or like what, you know, whatever it is.
Like no blood, no foul.
That's right. Yeah. That's incredible.
What's the age spread? What's your age spread?
I've got almost 8 next month, 5, and then the baby is 18 months, 19 months, something like that. Oh, wow. Yeah, so there's a couple, it's a nice gap in between all of them. It definitely makes homeschool a worthy challenge for my wife for sure. Cause everybody's doing, my son, my oldest is like, dude, this kid is blowing through books. He like started reading
it's great.
last year, and I think he read all of Charlotte's Web, or 80% of Charlotte's Web in like one sitting, one evening. And he so he's got that independence. The middle one is like, she needs constant attention for the homeschool stuff. Mm-hmm. And the baby's the baby. She's the center of this. We call it the Camila show.
Nice. Yeah.
That's great,
the reading
man.
is everything, man. I mean, my wife, I remember she came to me and showed me a picture of like something she saw on the gram. It was like just shelves down the wall, and she wanted to make a whole wall. It's a small wall, but she wanted to dedicate that to books, and it kind of looked like a retail bookstore the way it was arranged, because like the books are facing out, and she said that if we do this, it'll really encourage reading, and she's really kind of the lead on a lot of the kind of rearing and educational stuff. And so I went to IKEA and bought the shelves, and I put these shelves up during the last Super Bowl, the San Francisco, Kansas City Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And, I remind her that all the time, that I instead of watching that game, I was putting shelves up. But she was right, the way the book, like she's got these books on the wall. And our 5-year-old, he's always going over there and grabbing one and hitting the beanbag. And he's doing like the Dick and Jane books right now. Mm-hmm. I think it was a good play. So that's good that your oldest is really getting after it.
Yeah. Well, moms always know, right? It's the same thing here. It's like moms always know. You got to just trust the moms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like on the vlogs and on the mommy blogs and all this, man. I can't even keep up.
Yeah.
I have to like listen to some of this stuff, and it's like, on parenting a 5-year-old, and I just feel like, you know what, man, like my boy's name is Tate, and it's like, this all sounds good, but I'm like the contrarian, I'm like, this lady sounds good, and she's like really she's got that Deepak Chopra thing going, but if she ever had to deal with like the Tatersaurus for like 3 hours straight, right. You'd eat her alive, man. You know what I mean? She would pack up the vlog, dude.
Totally.
She'd shut the channel down, man. If she had to, she got my little guy when he was like hangry.
Right.
If he was like hangry, he'd just tear her up. So
Hondo, I think every parent goes through that, where you're like, oh, that's not for my kid, right? You're like,
right, yeah.
This is not for my kid. I've tried to read some of those books too, and it's real hard to put that much intention around it. Mm-hmm. Where I try to bring a different type of intention around it, right? Where I'm just like, let's be fully present in this moment. Let me get on their level, and that's when I've experienced we all have the most fun.
Right.
So your wife, that's pretty interesting that you guys shared the sort of core values around helping people. I mean, I'm sure that's helped in your relationship.
That was like a bigger deal that was a big deal. Because like when I, like as a young guy in New York City, like, and just like making my way, and it's like you meet people and it's like, what do you do? I work at, this investment bank, or I work at this ad agency, or I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant, which are great things. And then it's like, I work at a homeless youth shelter, and it's like, oh, that's your job? Or like, I have an aunt, like I'm like right now, I guess I'm a senior executive at Covenant House. Like I work in our fundraising team, and I'm a senior vice president. I have an aunt, and she always says to me, when I see her, she's like, oh, hey, honey, are you still volunteering with those wayward children? I'm like, yes. I'm like, I still am. And she's like, oh, that's nice. But, and she's always like, well, maybe you should call your cousin and see if he can get you into the laborers union, or get you on the fire department or something. And, because I don't think she thinks that I'm actually, this is my career. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but also because like I would date girls, and they weren't really down with it, man. Like it was like that as a career was like, I wouldn't say it's kicking stuff up, but it was like, it wasn't what they had in mind. You know what I mean? For their partner, for their husband or whatever. And so, with Amanda, with my wife, it was like she was all in on Covenant House. Like even like for the last, 7-8 years that we've been married, there have been moments where she picks me up, because this work is hard, because our young people we work with do falter, and just like any profession, sometimes it can weigh on you, and the subject matter that we're dealing with can be tough. So, but she's the one who kind of she's sharing anecdotes with me where she shares stuff she never told me before, about like some of the young girls she was working with when she was there, and she believed in it from day one. She still does, and she's so. I don't think I would. I've done okay in my role there, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for her. Not just because she's the leader of our family on the home front, but because she's also kind of one of those people. There's maybe one or two others, but she's a big part of like keeping me inspired and keeping me going 110 miles an hour every day.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. It's funny how the universe just provides that in a lot of ways, Yeah.
I mean, it's about values, and principles, and especially when you want, like when, we're going to go do this life thing, we need a spouse who kind of aligns with our stuff. Right. And how, can help guide us too, I mean, is your wife entrepreneurial? Is she kind of, she packed those suitcases when you bought those one-way tickets to Hawaii, man. So I'd imagine she's got some, she's like, I know she must have a kind of determination and an adventurous kind of spirit to her too.
For sure. Yeah. It's interesting because as you're talking, I'm in the moment realizing just how incredible my wife is in terms of match up with me, because, I'm definitely the adventure seeker, right? I'm like, hey, let's go jump out of planes today, which we've done together. And my wife actually grew up very conservative. She's first generation immigrant from Uzbekistan.
Oh, wow.
And excuse me, she came over with her mom, her dad, and her sister on a refugee program. And literally they came over with nothing. And I think that was around 2004. I met her in 2005, and
where'd you meet?
We met. I went to college at Baruch in the city.
Oh yeah, great school.
Great school. It was similar in terms of like that connection point where when I saw her, I was like, oh, there's something there. I don't know what it is. I was too like young and not fully developed in my frontal cortex to really understand what it was, but I knew there was something there, and this is how the universe provides, man. I was in a public speaking course, and I was the only person that was born in the United States. So like when I would go give my speeches, I would be fucking trembling, and people were like, that was the best speech ever. And I'm like, it's just because I'm so comfortable with English. But it worked out great for me. I helped her with preparing for some of her stuff, and we just kind of got to know each other. And then I was actually dating somebody else at the time, and so was she. And the semester came to an end, and something just told me like, you better go say something now. And we just sat down and like had a conversation, and my wife's very conservative, and she was like, I don't know what, like, you're dating someone, but what is this? And I didn't really have an answer.
You, man. You're a dog, dude, bro. I love it.
You know what it is? I planted the seed, and then as it happens, I met her sister, who I had never met before, in a bar a year and a half later. And she was like, my sister is coming. And I asked her, I was like, are you from Uzbekistan? She's like, yeah. And I was like, do you have a sister? She's like, yes. And I was like, is her name Anna? She's like, how did you know that? And I was like, you guys just I could tell that you were family. And we started dating after that, we started hanging out. And I mean, I knew similar, right? Where like, I just knew right away.
Right.
She's been, I put her through, I stretch her on the growth stuff for sure. Right. It's every time, she's feeling like we're getting settled in, I'm like, hey, let's go live in a van.
Yeah. Yeah. She's gotta have some tolerance, man. Some patience and tolerance for sure.
Yeah. Well, I've also learned to like really, involve her in my thought process instead of, going on the ride by myself and then being like, hey, here's where we are. This is like, we're going to go right away, which is, I feel like that's like an art as well in a relationship,
Sure.
But it was values. Like we both valued family over everything. I grew up, in a single parent household. And so she grew up, her family is like the most loving family you could possibly imagine. When I met her parents, even though they barely spoke English, the interest that they took in their kids and everything they were doing, I was like, I had never seen that. And it was just a really beautiful thing for me to see. It was 100% what I needed in my life. And my wife has been a big part of me moving past some of this stuff. Like I was rambunctious as a kid, hanging out with the wrong. I was also that kid that you didn't want your kids hanging out with. And so were my friends. Right. And my wife gave me that space to really move past that. Like a lot of it is, as you and I've talked before, was around growing up without my father, and the challenges that I experienced in that were, it pushed me to the edge many times from my own experience. Right. And I realized looking back on it now, how important it was for me to go through that experience to be able to start that journey of like writing the book and sharing it and figuring out how to put that into the universe to help. Right.
Was there a father figure or like when you say that you grew up without a dad, because you never really told me about that. Like, was there anyone who supplemented that at all or no?
My mom was married several times or like dating, it was kind of, it was a roller coaster at my house. Right. We would have like 2 years where she was married and then she was getting divorced and they were moving on. Yeah. And so I never identified with any of those people. And like my dad came in and out. It's not like, he wasn't there 0% of the time, but he was probably there like 10% of the time. And, I think that was even more challenging for me.
Where's he now?
He lives, in Orange County.
Orange County, California?
California. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I made peace with him earlier this year, actually pre-COVID. I had processed it and,
oh, wow.
I took him to dinner when I was out there, and I had this like 4-hour dinner where I was like, look, man, I've processed this and I don't have any pain. There's no charge around it anymore, I can't explain how intense it was that this was driving most of what I was doing, right? In both positive and negative ways. And I came to a point where it was going to push me over the edge, one way or the other, if I didn't just face it down. Right. And so I took some time, I processed it. I did some Tony Robbins stuff, which was incredible. And I was able to move through it. Right. And like what I realized is that and it's probably easy to realize at 38 years old, is the only reason why it has a charge is because I'm choosing to let it have a charge. Right. And I just wasn't mature enough for 20 years of my adult life to really get my arms around that. And I'd never taken the time to even think about it, to be honest. Right. I hadn't taken the time to process anything. So it's, there was people, my mom was great about like, if I had a coach that took an interest in me, my mom would make sure that like I got that coach the next year. Right. She would make sure that I kind of had these connection points, and she planted seeds. But as a teenager, everybody goes through different things. Right.
Sure.
And I had a wild experience, man. I was wild.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know why. And I was just pushing the limits and I was just trying to find out who I was at the end of the day. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look back, like I reflect back, and like, I also think, I think like this whole pandemic forces you to reflect on life up until now.
Definitely.
And there's this like kind of default kind of mode that I go into, and it was more so like early days, like March, April, where I just found myself thinking about, because like there's this overarching kind of theme of like sickness and death, and that's part of the anxiety, right? That's like what's fueling some of these manifestations of different mental health stuff. And so you know, I had a good relationship with my father. You know, some of it was complicated, like I guess every father-son relationship can be, but he was, you know, we were close, especially the last 15 years, and it grew. And so, but like you think about how my kind of journey through childhood and adolescence and then adulthood, I was just driven by fear, man. Like a lot of it was fear. You know, it was, you know, I didn't know what, you know, I didn't really understand what faith was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a little boy, you know, and so even as a little kid, I was scared.
What were you scared of? Like, have you spent the time to think about that, or like, what was the center of it? If you don't mind sharing.
I mean, man, I think part of it, I think might have been biological. You know, I just was, you know, my dad, I think, was also an anxious guy. But also it was, you know, he was also a real charismatic, kind of imposing, kind of intimidating guy. So I think there was some of that was there too. And then, you know, I just kind of looked to my left and my right, and all these other kids, they seemed to get it. I didn't really get it. You know, I was like faking it till I made it, you know, and that was that for me kind of caused some of the stuff to kind of treat some of that anxiety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I was like, you know, just some of the rambunctiousness, you know, the kind of, you know, the machismo stuff was just manifestations of fear. You know, it still is,
right,
you know, today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate to that for sure. I mean, I've processed it in a really deep way because I've allowed myself to kind of step back and see it for what it was. I was just a kid, right? I can see it clearly for what it was. I was just a kid. Mm-hmm. And without that experience, I wouldn't be in this moment right now. You and I wouldn't have met, right? Nothing would have happened the same way. And it took me a long time, especially in the context of doing what I chose to do professionally, where, you know, the commercial real estate business is an extension of Wall Street today. And going into that business, I always knew I could make it, right? I always had this like confidence in myself that if I could just turn my focus towards something, I knew I could make it, because I just experienced so much as a youth that I felt I have that resilience within me, right?
Yeah.
And when I went and started working in New York on a professional level, there was a big imposter syndrome, because I looked around me and I saw all these kids that had grown up, and I'm like a full-on adult, right? I'm like late 20s at this time. And I've seen these kids that have grown up, and the typical background is like, you went to this high school, you went to this very well-known prestigious college, your family is this. And I was looking around, I'm like, fuck, man, I am the only dude, like, you know, Goggins style, if you've read Goggins, where I'm like, I'm the only guy in here that's a high school dropout, that doesn't have like a regular family, that grew up without a father, that was into drugs and alcohol as a kid and got in trouble and got arrested and all that stuff. And it was isolating because I isolated myself, right? From the standpoint that I didn't allow any of that to come through. And as I got more comfortable and, I started my own company, I built that thing. We bought a lot of property and I still hadn't faced that stuff down. Right. And it just came to a point where I needed to make peace with all of that before I could move on in the next chapter of my life, or that became the focus of that chapter of my life. Right. Which has been the last couple of years. And there was one thing that really sticks with me. I read a book by Mark Divine. I think it's called Unbeatable Mind. And he has in the middle of the book, he has a chapter where you write your own obituary if you're up for it. Right. He asks you to do that. And I did that one morning in New York, and it changed the way that I think about life, where I'm making decisions now saying, if a doctor's telling me or someone's telling me I have 1 week to live, would I invest my time in this? And if the answer is no, then I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And someone, I don't know if they must have read that book. I was speaking to a close friend who asked me to undertake that same exercise. And it was a couple of years ago. And, it felt great. And it felt great because of, in particular, how I've lived my life. The past 15, 20 years, I was able to, I feel really proud about what the small part I played in like accomplishments at Covenant House and about, my family. And so, it's, I've been looked out for in that regard. You know what I mean? Like it was, I made plenty of left turns when I was supposed to go right. And I really spent, I think, most of my 20s, doing that. The last 15 have been really good, and I think it's a great exercise to get into, reflect and stuff like that. Another thing that a guy told me once was kind of a guided meditation, and he asked us to. It's like a retreat I go on. I go twice a year with a group of guys, great guys, and so we're doing this guided meditation, and this he was a priest, a sober priest, and he had us envision ourselves at 16, and he was good about it. He was clever because he asked questions, or he kind of got you thinking about the detail. So I had this conversation with my 16-year-old self, and the way he framed it, I'll never forget it. He kind of, it was like he gave us a couple seconds to, think about the most important things you want to tell that young man, that child. And we didn't have much time with that person. And so what I chose to tell him is, things are going to you're going to be scared, and you're going to make mistakes, but everything's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And so try not to be afraid. And so for me, that kind of unlocked a kind of more spiritual kind of connection, conscious connection with God that I've been working on slowly, real slow. But something that's kind of been important,
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Have you read any Deepak Chopra stuff?
I haven't read him, but I've met him.
Oh wow.
Yeah, met him. I met him at our sleep out event.
Okay.
He's technically he's a Covenant House supporter, and I've met him on a number of occasions. But and I've also participated in a guided meditation that he led. Mm-hmm. It's like Deepak Chopra. Okay, yeah, I heard of this guy. I'm not really sure who he is. I know he's like the guru. But when that dude leads a guided meditation, you get it.
Yeah.
Right away. And it was a difficult circumstance, man. It's like we're in the shelter. We're in like the community room, like Pride Hall area, we call it. It's hot. There's no AC. It's like fall, November. And we're holding hands, and Deepak is bringing us through this. And it was like, so, I'm uncomfortable. But this guy was really good. I mean, he's got a wicked fastball when it comes to meditation, man.
For sure.
Yeah. And then I got to see part of, he did this, he did a show similar to this, with a donor that invited me to be in the audience. And I thought he was really good. I know he's been a big inspiration to you recently.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I finished reading Metahuman a couple weeks ago. I've been talking about this a lot because I would definitely recommend reading that book. It's hard to do it justice and I took it, one of my goals this year, and same with you, I had never even explored spirituality in any sense, right? And something just kind of came to me where I was like, let me check out this Deepak Chopra guy, because I hear, he's like a guru or something. Let me just see what it's all about. And so I picked 3 books to read, and I read a book that he wrote in the early 2000s, and then a book that he wrote recently that's like You Are the Universe, and then I just picked Metahuman, which is, I think it's one of his latest books. It was, it's hard to find words to describe the experience of reading that book at the place that I'm at on a conscious level, right? It was, I've experienced extended periods of just extreme quietness and calm internally, for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And then inevitably sort of, I would flow back to that place of chatter, in my mind, and Metahuman just turned something completely different. It was a really beautiful experience to just read that, and the way he talks about just constantly being in the moment just quiets your whole experience, which is incredible. And so that's amazing that you've met him. I would definitely recommend like reading or listening to Metahuman if you're interested in it, and for anybody that's listening, because I think at any point in your journey, you can take something away from that book. And it's definitely a book that I will read regularly, right? I just found it so powerful. And I wanted to ask you, as you've grown in your social work, right? I want to give people a sense of what your day-to-day is, because to me, when I've seen you, I've mostly seen you in the context of like you and I talking to a few kids, right, in a small room. But the intensity of that work day to day is, I just want to give people a sense of it to the extent that you can share kind of like what that day looks like or how it's evolved for you. Because I think it's a beautiful thing that's what you've chosen to do with your life, is to give back in this like really passionate and meaningful way.
Yeah. So right now, our direct care staff, our essential workers they're the ones who are on the floors with our young people, making sure that they have what they need. We've begun starting employment classes. We've begun restarting educational classes, resuming those. We are following Department of Health guidelines in connection with that. Young people who are coming into the shelter for the first time, and there are young people who are seeking safe shelter, and they're coming to us. They're quarantining. So, I saw our director of the health center recently, and things are going well on that front. No cases, 0 cases, but we still have young people quarantining for precautionary measures, taking temperatures for folks coming in and into the building. staff or young people. And then some of those appointments with mental health care professionals, those are happening because they need to. And then like our moms and babies programming, I know we had a mom who was positive, and now she recovered and she's okay, and her baby is okay. And so the shelter's slowly kind of picking up. It's still tough because the job market here in New York City, the economy is still somewhat stalled. Mm-hmm. And really my role at this point is to really make sure all those people can do what they do. So where my lane, if you will, or where I'm focused is on doing outreach to supporters like yourself, to other folks, board members, some of the key decision makers who were involved in really guiding us through this crisis, like our board of directors or major donors, and then also with a lot of companies that support Covenant House at different levels, companies that have been just really generous towards our COVID-19 relief efforts, and also companies who have an interest in some of the social justice and anti-racism initiatives that we've been undertaking. And so like I always say, like when I started the Covenant House and after I went to social work school, like the first half of my career, I was working with kids. And now I do see kids, like, as you know, like we spent time with some kids a couple months back. It seems like forever now, but we're going to do that again soon. Yeah. But it's now my day to day really involves working with folks who can help us, by way of resources, who can help us by way of connecting us to the people that we need to help with ventilation in the shelter, to kind of achieve that, optimum ventilation, to try to minimize the likelihood of infection. The people that can help us with whether it's installing, dividers, plexiglass dividers, at those point of contacts, through when young people are entering the shelter, to those groups of advocates who are gearing up to do another virtual sleep out and raise $500,000 for the mission. So it's really now my day to day is really kind of consists of just that. Talking to those good folks. Yeah,
and supporting everybody. I mean, even supporting your team, right? And I'm sure just because you were in the trenches of doing the social work, that must give you an incredible insight into how you can best support the team. Because similar to how you were talking about how your wife kind of holds you up on some of the tough days, it sounds like your role is to do that as well, along with many other things, right? Raising funds and coordination of everything.
Yeah, like I think about like those folks who are in there, in the morning, evening, and overnight shifts, who are there kind of making sure that our young people have everything they need, from soap and toothpaste to making sure they can get to class on time, and to make sure, help them with that application to Starbucks or Home Depot or wherever. Or if they lose their job, or and how do they get it back, or if they're feeling some, if they're revisiting some trauma, that went on in childhood, and something that they can't quite shake, and it's just they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, or if they started falling into drugs and alcohol, like a lot of our kids at Covenant House, very small rates of young people who use hard drugs, but things like marijuana, alcohol, like things like you and I did, that's also, that can be dangerous. That is dangerous, especially for some of our young people. So, how do we get them help for that, and to get them to where they're in a better way. Right. And so, it's those are those people who are doing that work. They're the essential workers, and so for me, it's about my job is in order for them to do that, we're going to need we hire them for a reason, because they're good at what they do, right? Like this is a profession. We need people who have certain attributes and virtues that can do this, and skills, and so I need to get the organization what it needs, and most of the time that's money, because that's how this happens. So I'm not. My objective isn't to raise millions of dollars. My objective is to help Covenant House New York shelter 2,000 kids a year. It just so happens that in order to achieve that, in order to help those young people escape the street, help those young people, live a healthy way, we're going to need millions of dollars to accomplish that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, just to go a little deeper, are you good on time? You've got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I'm good.
I think,
yeah.
You sure? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be amazing to walk someone through what it's like for, like, what if you're coming to the Covenant House as a to Covenant House, to the Cove,
right? Yeah.
What's that process like? You're a kid on the street. You're, for whatever reason, you're homeless. What is that journey coming in and asking for help?
We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day, right? Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving, the doors are open. We're staffed. We have security. And so a young person comes in, they're scared. They oftentimes have a preconceived notion of where it is they are. Kids come to us all different channels, but it's mostly through word of mouth, right? And it's also through Google searches, like search engine results. And because if you type homeless youth shelter, Covenant House will be up there amongst the results. And so, but mostly word of mouth. I mean, it's like Covenant House is like the Ritz-Carlton of homeless youth shelters in New York City. And so they're coming in, but they probably have had some experience with some kind of institution, whether it's foster care or diagnostic treatment center or a group home or adult shelter. The alternative for we serve kids who are under 21. So they're all between 17 and 21, mostly 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And so they're coming in and they might have an infant or toddler in tow. And then, the stakes are higher. But they're afraid, they're apprehensive, they're uncomfortable. And so we know all this. And what we've learned is that the best response is to ask, would you like a hot plate of food? Right? Would you like to put your stuff in a locker? Would you like a lock in a locker? And would you like me to show you where you can go into a private bathroom to shower with a lock on the door? Like, you want to, get clean and get yourself together, or would you like a clean bed and a safe place to sleep for a few hours before we talk, or before you get something to eat, or before you do your laundry? It's not like, cause we did a deep dive into what the system is like, and the system is like, name, date of birth, last known address, right? And so we didn't want to do that. And so it starts with that. It starts with, are you hungry? Are you tired? Or do you want to wash your clothes? Do you want to take a shower or whatever? And so and then after that, it's a couple of, we do need to know some things, right? Like, we need to know, what's going on. Are you safe? Is someone looking for you? Sometimes that can happen too. It's not uncommon for us to have like pimps waiting across the street or something like that. And so we want to
waiting across the street, like literally they'll follow the kids to the shelter. Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They'll be hanging outside, hanging out across the street. They'll be trying to poach young people. Like, it used to be Backpage, but Covenant House was key in legislation to shut down Backpage. That happened last year. But Craigslist, there's some really twisted people out there who are doing things like, they'll post like pictures of money and like say, if you're a young lady at Covenant House, respond to this message, and you can make a lot of money. And this is all part of the reality that close to a third of young people who are experiencing homeless, young people who have spent time on the streets have been manipulated into sex trafficking or have been trafficked, and who have, really used their bodies as a commodity to survive.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's awful. But it's real. It's there. It's kind of, it aligns a lot with a lot of street gang stuff. It takes different forms. It can be sophisticated, and it could also kind of be, more of that kind of street gang kind of mentality where it's not as organized, but it's still the same. And so there's another large percentage of young people have suffered child abuse, some form of trauma in the home, in the familial environment, and so there's we have to be aware of that. And so in the part of the the welcoming process, often referred to as the intake process, there's a definite kind of fragile procedure that involves kind of getting the information you need to know, like name and age. Because if we don't accept young people who are 22, 23. That might change in New York City, but it varies in state to state. But in New York City, that's our cutoff right now. So,
is there a reason for that cutoff? It's
just kind of capacity.
Yeah.
And then the way the continuum is set up, it's also some of the licensure stuff. Like, operations like ours are a public-private partnership. We depend on your dollars, on hundreds of families and their contributions, but we also depend on some help from city government, state government, federal government stuff. And so when they come in, they get those immediate needs met, addressed right away, and then they're assigned to a floor. Now, if they're transgender and they have a certain, if they identify, that's the floor they're assigned to, right? So if they identify as male, that's where they're comfortable. That's where they're assigned, and then we're going to give it 48 hours before we're going to go a bit more in depth into the basic assessment.
Yeah.
And then also if they're a mom with a baby, they're assigned to the moms and babies program. So boys are with boys, girls are with girls, moms are with moms and babies, and obviously boys can't go on the girls' floor and vice versa.
That's like one of the most intense floors that I've seen too. Is
which one?
With the moms and babies.
Yeah.
I remember you took us through, or you had somebody take my wife and I through.
All right.
And that was I felt that one in the heart. And when I was a kid, my mom was in a shelter with myself and my sister for a little bit, and when I was really young.
Oh wow.
And I don't even remember that much of it. I remember coming out of it, and to experience that that was a real eye opener for me.
Yeah, man. I got to confess, like I knew you and Anna had just had your third kid, and so I intentionally brought you up to that floor because I knew once Anna saw that, we'd get a big donation out of it. But it's we got to do what we got to do. But
you got a lifetime customer on that.
That's right. But it's yeah, man. That's my experience too, dude. Like those moms, and especially being a parent, relatively new parents like us. I've been at it now over 5 years, and I got baptized 5 years ago, and you got baptized 8 years ago. When I see these young women pushing their babies in their strollers, and I think about the fact that I just can't help but compare. Like there's moments, earlier today you talked about how the 2 kids, it's chaotic, and then 3 kids, it's just like Armageddon, but like my wife, who's a master, 2 kids is a lot, right? And like 5 o'clock, 5:30, dinner time, bath, it's the witching hour.
Yeah,
and
shit gets crazy.
It gets crazy, man. And then it's like, but there's times where it's like I can tag my mother-in-law comes in, right? And there's times when my mom comes in, and there's like, my oldest is going to day camp. And so, but these moms, there's the only person they can tag in is the staff on the floor, and there's, when you're with small kids and they're having a temper tantrum or they're really small and they're crying, you need to tag someone in, man. You need that. And so it's like when now it's a bit more raw and sensitive for me because I have little ones of my own, and I know that it's tough. And I also know that a lot of and we've been focusing on this at Covenant House for decades, but the victim of the abuse can, in clinical studies show that the victim is at high risk for becoming the aggressor, right? And of kind of replaying that maladaptive, that destructive and harmful and unhealthy behavior. And so a lot of times it's like they just don't know, like they just don't realize it. It's like educational. It's kind of like an intersection of mental health and educational level. I was like, I think I started at the Cove. I was like 23, 24, and then by the time I was like 29, 30, I'm the director of the Moms and Babies program. And I'm not married. I couldn't really even hold down a girlfriend for too long. But I'm working with this team of youth advisors and clinicians and educators who are working on making sure our moms and their kids have what they need, man. It's like, it's just been such a wild ride, but that's the stakes are higher there. Kids learn their ABCs at Covenant House. They learn how to walk at Covenant House. They're going through that early stage developmental stuff at Covenant House, and so it's important. I've also had I've met adults who are in their 40s who were born at Covenant House.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And it's like I met a guy whose father was at Covenant House, and he spoke at an event a couple of years back, and he took the stage and he said he introduced himself, and he said he was he was an executive at an investment bank, and he said, this is what I do for a living, and I live here, and he said, you're probably wondering, what do I have to do with Covenant House? Well, I never lived at Covenant House, but my father did. And just the whole room kind of just like you just could hear everyone go, you know what I mean? And then he dropped it, man, and he explained that if it wasn't for Covenant House and being there for his father, he probably never would have been born, right? And he never would have had the relationship with his dad like he has today. And so, that's super powerful. It's like over 20 years in, I've been to some funerals. I've probably been to about 5 funerals.
Yeah.
Of kids who lived with us for a while, and that's terrible. And it was every single funeral I went to, there were more staff at the funeral than family.
Yeah.
And there were funerals where it was just Covenant House staff.
Wow.
But I've been to college graduations too. Like I've been to, there was this young lady who was with us who I keep in touch with. Her name is Hannah, and she graduated from the College of Mount St. Vincent up in the Bronx a couple of years back. And it's just incredible, man, to watch some of that. It's tough work, but when you have moments of victory like that, it's just worthwhile. It's just great,
Yeah, that's incredible. And you guys do it in such a short period of time. When the kid, you were talking about when the kids come into the program, and I know it's only 2 or 3 weeks that you have them.
Yeah, it's 30 days. You have 30 days to get them employed, I shouldn't. I'm getting ahead of ourselves. To get them address the obviously the immediacy, safe place to sleep, food, clothing, but then get them over to the health center for a full comprehensive physical, to get them to speak to a social worker, maybe a psychiatrist if necessary, address this stuff, and then get them to a place where they're going on job interviews, secure a job, get a paycheck, and then advance to like the next stage of the continuum. It can stretch to like 60 days to 2 months. But for me, the problem with the continuum is that, and I've kind of been looking at this for too long, I guess, but there's just, that's just not enough time. It's for some kids it is, and some kids they grind through and they're just about it. But not all do. And some are slow learners like you and I. And it's, I don't know, man. It's just like I sometimes wonder, it's the way the system's set up. It's the employment focus is good, but it's like part of me thinks that I think as part of this is being a parent. It's like education is everything, and mental health is even before education. It starts with mental health, because if you have a learning disability, if you have a developmental disability, if you have early onset schizophrenia, early onset major depressive disorder, bipolar 1, whatever it is, that's going to affect how you learn. Right. And that's going to affect your ability to get a high school equivalency diploma. It's going to affect your ability to enroll in college, to advance in college, to be able to handle that curriculum. And the way the system is set up, you need those pieces of paper. Like, there are success stories, and we all know them. And it's not, but not everyone. We're not playing those odds, right? We're not playing that game. We need those pieces of paper. And we need as many pieces of paper as we could get, because of who our young people are coming from communities of poverty, where the fact of the matter is, if they don't get a high school equivalency diploma, their life expectancy is shorter. I mean, that's a fact. Like,
right.
Everyone who's listening to this can Google that. Like, people who don't have their high school equivalency diploma don't live as long as people who do, and people who enroll in college statistically live longer than people who don't enroll in college, and people who graduate college live longer than people. So it's life and death. It should be education. There's no, with like human services, at least, the digital world has addressed a lot of it, but when it comes down to it, it's that eyeball to eyeball connection. There's no Uber for social work. It's like you see stuff like, it's not, the meditation app isn't it, like I use that stuff. That's cool. But it's, we need to, there still hasn't been any supplement for that individual attention. And also the way the system's set up, there's just not enough emphasis on education. There's not enough time that's allotted to get young people to a place where they're advancing in their educations, or immersed in their educations like they should be. When we're talking about homeless young adults, like 18 to 21, the priority should be for them to get their high school equivalency diploma and enroll in college. Whether they finish college, I can let that go, but I hope they do. But let's get them on that track, and so that's where I struggle. That's where I wonder, and I mean, what I mean by that is, like, if a young person gets a job, it's great. But, if they don't have their high school equivalency diploma, I feel like that's like kind of like a time bomb.
Yeah.
And we got to address that too,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, as someone, I got my GED, and I'm thankful to my, to my mom for pushing me to do that. And even the GED statistics are not great, right? I mean, there's a few key factors, and that is definitely one of them. And I think part of what I've been thinking about this as well. I think part of it is just an expectation that society has met, and how can you change that expectation? And that was a big part of me realizing that I can send a message out that don't let yourself become that statistic, right? Mm-hmm. You're only becoming that statistic because you're choosing to. If you get to a job and someone's like, hey, you want to move up, and you can't move up because you don't have a high school degree, which I've been told many times at many of the jobs that I worked early on, that's a signal for you to go improve your education, right? And it's not just about, like, not everybody's great at school, not everybody wants to go through it. You just got to tough it out sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's I hear you, and it's about that self-determination, right? And that self-empowerment, and kind of like saying, I'm gonna exert my will here, and sometimes, and I always, if I could see an angle on that working with a young person, I usually try to take it. But it's also tough for them too, because, they are resilient. They are, but if, if there's a mental health diagnosis that hasn't been identified, then we are pissing in the wind, man.
Yeah.
That's got to be addressed. I've had situations where it's not, and it doesn't end well, and it's tough because there's stigma. There's just kind of a real apprehensive kind of response to a lot of like it's because a lot of these kids are growing up in situations and they don't want to talk about their feelings, and it's not just the culture of poverty. It's true too in my household. It's like it wasn't something that was really embraced. But it could really mean that it could be a life or death situation. It could really be something that the gravity could be extreme.
Yeah.
And so, I know I'm talking a lot in identifying the problem, but I do, and I think there's a bit of a shift towards, and there is definitely a shift on mental health, but I just don't know if in terms of like the whole homelessness continuum. I know at Covenant House, we bulked up our clinical programming. We've increased the number of licensed social workers that we have a lot of LCSWs, licensed clinical social workers. And those folks, they have to like take some ridiculous amount of training to get that license. I'm a licensed master social worker. You got to have those people because they know the DSM-4. They're qualified, they're skilled. But I think it's also making sure that we really give everyone that attention, that assessment to make sure that we're addressing it all, so that they can kind of have like that clear runway,
Yeah.
Because if they don't, man, bad things can happen, and it's going to be even worse if there's like a baby involved, a child. So.
Right. Yeah. The cycle just continues. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I've wondered, like, I tried to like kick out of the box and be like, so, because like a lot of technology has like this individual kind of accommodation, right? Like you order the Uber and the Uber comes for you, or the Airbnb or the WeWork, or like what's like the Task Rabbit. You need someone to put together your IKEA stuff. You can, someone's out there with like a cordless drill and the know-how, and it's you see like the amount of money that's being spent on mental health initiatives in New York City and beyond. It's like you sit there and wonder, like, it's almost to the point where you wonder, like, with the close to $1 billion, I think the budget is in New York City. I think I'm going to be pretty close if you fact check me. Like you could maybe pay for like, I don't know what the math is, but you might be able to pay like to each homeless person have their own individual like therapist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think there's something that we have to figure out, to make sure that kind of like, because like it's the people, you talked about coaches, it's your mom, right? It's my mom. It's my dad. It's other people too, though, man. It's other people too. Like it's, for me, it's like, Jim White, Kevin Singleton, Jack Cullinane, Nick Nolan, like these guys that like, they're just riders. And they're like older. Some of them are older. Some of them are younger, but they're just, they're there. They're there to kind of, if sometimes to shine a beacon for me, or I'm on the ground, man. I'm covered in like smoke and fog, and I don't know which way to go, and I'm taking fire from all directions, and it's like, one of these guys comes up in like the Huey, and it's like, go east, dude. Go east to the high ground. I got you. And it's like, these kids, these people, like a lot of people don't have that. They don't have those people up there. They don't have those people in the chopper kind of up there and, providing that cover. And so, we got to figure out a way through society, through public-private partnership to provide that. And so, Covenant House does some of that, but it's like, it's tough, man. It's just, it's really tough. I'm not sure what the solution is.
Yeah. Well, you guys are actively working on it every day, right? And I think I know you have to get going, and on sort of an ending note, I just wanted to say how much of an innovator I think you are in your space. Just that thought process that you just laid out is like you're focused on kicking outside of the box so that you can find better solutions. And I think that's it's a beautiful thing. I think it's indicative of who you are. I think it's indicative of what the Cove represents. And I don't know if you have any finishing thoughts that you'd like to share, tell people where to go, how they can help, or any other thoughts. We don't have to stop just abruptly, but I know you're on a time limit.
It's all good. Covenanthouse.org, COVENTHOUSE.org. Come check us out, get connected, make a donation, whatever you can afford. No such thing as a donation that's too small. And yeah, man, just get connect to the movement, be a part of it. You won't regret it. Change your life. And I love you, bro.
I love you too, man. I appreciate the time. Me, dude. Yeah, of course. Yeah, man, this was I knew this one was going to be fire. I'm going to hit stop on the record, but don't close your browser, please.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. That's it, folks. What an incredible conversation with Tod. I always enjoy speaking with him and hearing more about his story. I feel like each time I talk to him, I hear more about his background, and I'm always just humbled and impressed by what he does. Again, check him out at covenanthouse.org. I appreciate Tod and his time. Shout out to Chris Williams for helping produce the show, and stay tuned. Episodes that are coming up: Professor Fabio Coelho, a Renzo Gracie jiu-jitsu black belt out of New York. He's my teacher early on in my jiu-jitsu journey. I'm still pretty early in it, but everything I learned, I really absorbed what he did. We're going to have some fun on that episode. And then we've also got coming up Sean Perryman, who is a friend of mine from college who's running for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Those are going to be some fuego episodes. I love you guys. Appreciate everybody who's listening. Stay tuned.